Welcome back to Retirement Redefined. I'm Brad Gatto, and today we have made it. We've made it to the final chapter of Psychology of Money, chapter 20, called Confessions. This chapter is kind of fun because it's personal. Morgan actually shares his own money habits and beliefs, showing that even the experts don't have it all perfectly figured out. It's a reminder that money is deeply individual. Your values, your goals, and comfort level should guide your decisions. Let's take a look at some of these confessions and the lessons behind them. Here I am by myself for chapter 20. If you listened to the last episode, unfortunately, I was by myself for that episode as well. Carly's absent, not due to her own issues, but to my calendaring issues, as I said before in the previous episode, but just in case you missed that one. Normally, Carly and I get to banter a little bit about what's going on in our lives and what's new and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll just tell you, because nobody's going to ask me, because I don't have anybody here with me. It's fall as I record this. Obviously, they come out a little bit later than we record them, or fall is at least starting. And I love this season of life. I love when the seasons change. I love football. My wife and I just celebrated 20 years of marriage, and so took a fun trip for that. And I love that school's back in session. I love that my kids have a place to go during the week, and it gives my wife a break, because my wife is the COO of what I like to call the Gatto Ponderosa, and it gives her some reprieve, which is well-deserved. So that's a little bit about what's going on the fiat side of things. We got some really busy weeks coming up here in the fall. Let me just say this. Let me just encourage all of the listeners. If you are not engaged in kind of the social network that we've created and the culture that we've created, and you're not coming to our social events and you're not coming to educational events, I would just encourage you to do it. We've had a lot recently. We've got a lot more coming up, and I've just had so much fun recently that I just want to use that as an encouragement to all of you, that outside of just, if you're a current client and you're not engaged in that stuff, it's a big part of the value that we offer. And if you're not yet a client and you're listening to this podcast, I'd still encourage you to come hang out with us. We really try to create a culture of fun and education, and those two things combined, if you can get those two things in the same event, same breath, what a wonderful, wonderful place to be. So there's a shameless plug. But today we are at the end of the Psychology of Money. Kind of a bittersweet day. We've been going through this book for a very long time. I've been telling you from the beginning, there's 20 chapters. Well, today is chapter 20. And the title of chapter 20, Confessions, like I said before, the psychology of my own money. This chapter, Morgan actually gets into some of his beliefs, some of his idiosyncrasies, I would call them, as it comes to money. And so what I want to do today is I'm going to give you a couple of his, but I'm going to give you a couple of mine. I'm going to give you some of my confessions as it relates to money. But I love how he starts this chapter. Okay, so I'm going to kind of read the beginning before we get into confessions. I just want to read a little snippet, a little story time with Brad here of Morgan's book. It says, Sandy Goetzman, I don't know how to pronounce it perfectly here, a billionaire investor who founded the consulting group First Manhattan, is said to ask one question when interviewing candidates for his investment team. And that is, what do you own and why? Not, which stocks do you think are cheap, or what economy is about to have a recession? Just show me what you do with your own money. Morgan says, I love this question because it highlights what can often be a mile-wide gap between what makes sense, which is what people suggest that you do, and what feels right to them, which is what they actually do. Couple anecdotal points here. Number one, I find this very interesting. Half of all U.S. mutual fund managers, as an example, don't have money in their own fund. So there's this chasm between what they think you should do, because they built the fund that way, and what they actually do. Less than half. Different example, doctors. When it comes to end-of-life care, one of the things I think you would be surprised by if you started to look into it is most doctors don't take their own advice. The type of things that they tell you to do, the type of care they tell you to get towards the end of life, or whether it's, again, dealing with something like cancer, or it's just like a pure end-of-life type, just old age and how to kind of like take care of yourself, or the care that you need, surgeries, whatever it may be. Most doctors don't take their own advice, which is really interesting. And that kind of goes to the summary. If you didn't listen to the last episode, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to it. But at the end of the day, there's this gap between what people think you should do and what we actually do. So Morgan, in that vein, gives a couple of confessions of him admitting, basically, look, I know that there's things I should be doing that I'm not doing. And in spite of writing what I think is one of the best modern books on money, basically doing things that maybe the average financial advisor, as an example, wouldn't recommend. And one of the things that he points out in here is he doesn't have a mortgage on his home. His home is paid off. And the point he's trying to make there is like, look, when interest rates were down below 3%, I get that it probably made sense for me to carry a mortgage, but it's just not something that I love to do. He doesn't sleep at night well when he has debt. And so just no mortgage. That's an example. He gives another example in here. From a savings perspective, him and his wife at a young age set their standard of living. And as their income went up, he was in the world of finance. I think his wife was in healthcare. Don't quote me on that. But as their incomes went up over time, they did not increase their lifestyle. It was a mental, like purposeful decision that they made, that they were happy at the lifestyle that they were at. And so as more income came in the door, they were just going to save more. That was the decision that he made. Another confession that he makes here is that he has about 20% of his portfolio in cash. Now, he knows the spreadsheet would tell you that's too much. It's just too much cash to have on hand, but it helps him sleep at night. That's the amount that he feels comfortable with, to know that he doesn't ever have to touch his stocks when things go into crisis mode. Not if, because we all know that. It's just when, a matter of when, and what's going to kind of set the markets off. So about 20% of his portfolio sits in cash. And he's not wrong. I wouldn't recommend that you do that, just not generally speaking from a spreadsheet perspective. And there's other things that he confesses to in here. And so if you want to read all of his confessions, go ahead and read the book. I'll give you a couple of mine. And I think hopefully you find this interesting and maybe a bit insightful into the way that we do planning. But one of my confessions is I save, from a retirement perspective, all of my money into an after-tax account. As much into brokerage and Roth IRA as I possibly can. Now, that isn't the spreadsheet thing to do. Based on the tax rates that I pay and just pure tax diversification, I should also be putting money in a pre-tax account. I should probably have all three. If I was giving myself my own advice, I would have all three, or at least be saving into all three buckets. I don't. I just have this bias that I just don't want Congress to have control over the taxes that I pay in the future. And if I choose to defer these tax bills to a later date, I just don't love the idea of not knowing what they are. I just don't like it. I'm also the person that, because I own a business, I have to pay quarterly tax estimates. And the right financial decision to make there is to pay as little as possible as you can throughout the year, and then write the biggest check you can write at the end of the year. You just hold on to your money as long as you possibly can. I hate that. I hate the idea that I owe the government money. I hate the idea that I have to write this big check. I know that financially it makes the most sense to do that. And that's exactly what I should do from a spreadsheet perspective. And my accountant and I argue about this every single year. And I just can't do it. I just can't stomach the idea that I got to write that check. And so unfortunately, because of how I feel about things, I lose out on a little bit of interest that my money could be earning if it's sat in my own hands instead of giving it to the government. Here's another big confession. I'm not a good saver. I don't particularly like saving money. It's not fun for me. I like to spend. I like experiences. I like things. And unfortunately, and I think my wife does listen to the podcast. I guess I haven't asked her recently. So maybe she started to tune me out. But she's not a saver either. And so as a married couple, you have two spenders in the household. So it's really tough for us to save money. And it's only because of my job and what I know and being in it all day, every day, that I do it. If I wasn't, and I was just out there left to my own devices and not in the world of personal finance every day, I just don't know that I would have saved anything by this point in time. And the last thing that I want to talk about, and this one's important to me, and it's a confession that I think It's not advice, okay? Because it's a podcast. I can't give you advice. But I'm attempting to raise 2 boys. They're now 15 and 12 years old. And money is one of those things you just can't get around. It's a part of everybody's life. And so I'm attempting to influence them as positively as I can as it relates to money. Because at the end of the day, you guys, there's only 3 things you can do with money. You can spend it, save it, or give it away. That's it. Those are the 3 things. And I think you should do all 3. I think everybody should do all 3. If you're not spending some money, saving some money, and giving some money away, I think you're missing out on the, being as happy as you possibly can as it relates to money. And so one of the things I've imparted on my boys is just that, is for every $1 that comes in the door that they get, whether it's through birthday money, it's money that's gifted to them, or it's money that's earned. My boys have jobs, okay? I do think it's important for kids to work. It's my opinion, is they do all 3. They give, they save, and they spend. Our rule at our house is this: 50% of what they get, they can spend. They can kind of do whatever they want, have fun with it, and just go have a ball. And I will tell you right now that at 15 and 12, they're spending money on things that I don't agree with at all. So it's really hard for me to let them actually spend this 50% and watch them do it, knowing that the decisions they're making, aren't long-term beneficial for them. 25% of it they have to save. Now we help them where it's saved and that kind of stuff, and we match it. Whatever money they put in, now they have to do 25. They can do more, but they have to do 25%. So if they put in $1, we put in $1. And so we're trying to incentivize the behavior of savings. And it's worked, kind of. My 12-year-old's a better saver than my 15-year-old. And so there's been times where he's like, well, wait a minute. I know I had to save 25, but if I put more in, you put more in? Yeah, but that's the way it works. Okay, I want to put more in. So that's what we do. And then 25% they have to give away. Now we let them decide where they want to give it. It has to be some sort of nonprofit, charity, church, or something like that. But I want them to feel what it feels like to give and to be generous. Because I've always said, and I genuinely believe this, the only thing that's better than getting a gift is giving a gift. And I want them to be able to feel that and to kind of build that into the fabric of who they are as they grow up, so that when it comes to giving as an adult, it's just kind of baked into who they are. And so I would encourage all of you in that area, in that confession of mine, which I actually think is a positive, not a negative, like me telling you I'm not a saver. That's a negative, but that's just who I am. That when it comes to your kids, your grandkids, if you want to be beneficial to them, teach them how to do all 3 of those things. Don't just teach them how to spend money wisely. Don't just teach them how to save money. Also teach them how to give money away and be generous with the resources that they have. At the end of the day, the reason Morgan ended the book this way is he's trying to drive home this point that this book is all about, which is just because there's a certain set of rules that say you should do this or you should do that, or that this financially makes sense, does not mean that that's the way that it always goes down, and does not mean that it's the way you should do it. Morgan, by his own admission in chapter 20, is confessing to the readers, like, look, I don't take my own advice all the time. I know this stuff is true. I know that this is what I should be doing by the letter of the law, the financial law. And numbers are numbers. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. But that doesn't mean I do all of those things. Doesn't mean he's in a bad spot financially, because he has found that marriage or that balance between doing what the spreadsheet says to do and doing what helps him and his family sleep at night. And if you get anything out of this book, if you've got anything out of these podcast episodes, I hope that's exactly what it is. That you're working towards finding that balance and being comfortable with that balance in your life. As a financial advisor, one of the hardest things that I deal with are the people on the extremes. They come in and they go, oh, I just want to do what the spreadsheet says to do. I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I just want to, whatever you tell me to do, that's what I'm going to do. And the example I try to give them is like, here's why I don't think that's a good idea. Because if I weren't a financial advisor yet, but I was a dietitian, and you came to me and said, Brad, I just want to lose 10 pounds. And I don't care health-wise, comfort-wise, the best way to lose 10 pounds. I just want to lose 10 pounds as fast as I possibly can. And I go, okay, well, just eat broccoli for every meal, every day. Now, am I right? Let's just say I was. Let's just say that's the fastest way to lose weight, which, frankly, if all you ever ate was broccoli, you're going to lose weight, and you're going to lose it pretty fast. We all know that. But what if you hate broccoli? Like, how long is that going to last? I mean, are you going to be able to do it long enough to actually lose the 10 pounds? Maybe. But even if you get to that point, what are the odds you actually stick with the diet and keep the 10 pounds off? Not good. And so the problem with the spreadsheet answer when it's not married to your head sheet is as human beings, we will white knuckle things for as long as we possibly can. And we do it all the time, whether it's with jobs that we don't like and sticking with them, or financial decisions, or health decisions, or decisions with our kids, or whatever it may be. We're really good at white knuckling things. The problem is eventually your grip is going to give out, and reality is going to set in, and change is going to have to set in. And so being able to marry those two things together to stick with a long-term financial plan that allows you just to feel comfortable with where you're at. Because at the end of the day, you guys, being in this industry gives you a very interesting insight. Never set out to be a financial advisor. It was never my goal when I went to college. I got a degree in youth ministry. I never thought I was going to be doing this. Yet, and this isn't taking away from youth ministry and the time I spent with those kids and, that kind of stuff, because that was amazing. But I never thought this job could be so rewarding. And the reward comes not when, we beat the S&P by 5% or you have a double-digit return in your portfolio. It comes when you see that client sit across the table and take a deep breath and go, I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable sleeping. I feel comfortable with the risk that I'm taking. I feel comfortable with the amount of spending that I'm doing. I feel comfortable giving more money away than I did before because of my overall plan makes sense to me now. And that all comes when we find that marriage between what you're comfortable with, the outcomes that you're seeking as a family, and what actually makes sense on the spreadsheet, and finding that balance for where you're at. That cannot happen without true comprehensive financial planning. That cannot happen if you're just looking for somebody to give you pure investment advice and build the most efficient portfolio that they possibly can. And so I'd encourage all of you as listeners that if you're an existing client of Fiat, I know we've gone through this process with you. We've asked you tons of questions about who you are personally, the best financial decisions you've made in your life, the worst ones, where your biases come from, and these sorts of things. Continue to review that stuff with your advisor. If you have a difference of opinion, because we all change over time, let us know. Because those are things that we need to know about, and they're vitally important. And if you're having trouble sleeping at night for any reason whatsoever, like I said, bring that to our attention. If you're not yet a client of our firm and what I'm describing isn't the process you went through with your advisor, give us a shot. Give us a shout. Let us take you through that process. Even if you take all of that process back to your existing advisor and use the information you get from us and driving you through this financial planning process that takes both into account the spreadsheet and the psychology of money as it relates to your family, you'll learn a lot and you'll get a lot out of it. And hopefully you'll be one of those people that sits across the table. I've had so many of these conversations over the years, and they're all very vivid in my mind, where you see that person take that deep breath and realize that they're going to be okay, whatever their okay is. Special thanks to Morgan for writing this book. I don't know what led him to write the book or why he chose to do it, but it's an amazing book. And this is the last chapter. That being said, I have a little bit of a surprise for you, and that is this. At the end of the last chapter, there's a postscript. The postscript is a brief history of why the U.S. consumer thinks the way that they do. Now, at some point, it won't be the next episode, at some point, I do want to address the postscript. So I know, and I did it on purpose. I told you at the beginning of this is going to be the last ever episode of the Psychology of Money. But I didn't lie. I was just trying to make it a surprise that there is a postscript, and I have to do it. The reason I have to do it is, one, I don't really want the book to be over. But two, the postscript, like I said before, it's a history of why the U.S. consumer thinks the way they do. If you know me at all, I'm a history guy. And so being able to look back at history and how that has shaped why the average American consumer thinks the way that we do, to me, I just find that so interesting. So if you're not a history person, when I get back to that chapter, just skip it, that episode. But But again, it's not going to be next week or it's not going to be the next episode we release. But at some point in the future, I'm going to surprise you. And we are going to go over this postscript, the brief history of why the U.S. consumer thinks the way that they do. But outside of that, the general book is over. Thanks for going on the ride with us, The Psychology of Money. Hopefully you enjoyed this idea or concept of kind of a book review, a chapter by chapter book review. There are other books out there that I think are worth going through in this manner. We've not chosen the next book that we will go through, but hopefully you enjoy these types of episodes. If you don't, reach out to us and let us know and say, don't do that again. Don't like those episodes. And if you actually particularly enjoy them, we'll take any feedback that you want to give us. But again, Morgan, thanks for writing the book. Everybody out there, words to live by. Find that balance between how you feel and what makes sense on a spreadsheet. And you'll be that person that can sit across that table from me, take that deep breath. And a lot of people, I'm a hugger. So a lot of times that ends in a hug. So if you're not a hugger, that's totally fine. But it's a wonderful place to be financially. Yeah, it's hard to end an episode like this, so I feel like I'm rambling because I don't want it to be over, but I'm going to end it. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Retirement Redefined. If you want to know more information about fiat and who we are and what we do and what makes us tick, all of that information is on our website. It's fiatwm.com. So it's fiatwm.com. If you've not yet subscribed to our podcast, I would ask and encourage you to do that. And maybe, just maybe, even share it with a friend if you want to. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Retirement Redefined. We will see all of you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Fiat Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.